Anyway, on to today's programme, and although there is not a huge amount to report, there was one notable piece of news today which caught my attention, and that is Michael Shanks. Now, Michael Shanks is a Unionist MP, I think, if I remember correctly, and he's come out with, I think, what is a blatant statement regarding Scotland's resources. And what he's effectively said is that whatever resources belong to Scotland belong to the United Kingdom. So basically the implication is what's ours is ours, and that includes what you've got, and what's ours is our own. And in other words, people of Scotland should be thankful that they're having their resources removed and shared out amongst the rest of the UK, something which we don't benefit from in any way at all, as we all know. So why is he saying this now? Well, I think, again, this is another one of these tactics that the United Kingdom likes to launch on us every now and again, where they say there's nothing you can do about it. What we say goes, and whatever resources Scotland has belong to us, because we are the UK and we say so. We all know this is absolutely wrong. It's not the case, because the United Kingdom is not a country. It never was a country, and it was never created to be a country. It's a unitary state composed of two countries, essentially, Scotland and England, supposedly equal partners, but equal partners only in name, because, as we know, we don't have equal representation in the Parliament at Westminster. In fact, we have something like 10% of the representation that the rest of the UK has. England, on the other hand, has something like 87% representation of MPs at Westminster, with Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales picking up the last few bits and pieces. So the only country really which makes up the UK is England, and it's England as Britain. This kind of statement is made, I think, largely to both rubber noses in it, which is an old feeling that we all recognise, but also to put a stamp on things, to say, you can't complain, we're just going to take your stuff away and sell it, and there's nothing you can do about it because you're British, because we say so. And this is probably one of the most annoying and enraging things that the UK government does on a regular basis. There have been some other snippets of information kicking around, and I noticed that both in Wales and Scotland, that police officers have recently arrested people who have been protesting for simply wearing a t-shirt which said, if I remember correctly, and I'm quoting directly from the photograph I saw, support Palestine or recognise Palestine and reject, what was it said? It said support action for Palestine and recognise Palestine. And these words of action in Palestine, or Palestine in action, seem to have been all that was required for both Police Scotland and the Welsh Police to arrest people for simply holding placards that say support action in favour of Palestine. Because the word action and Palestine are linked with a pressure group which has been prescribed by the United Kingdom, any display of these two words, no matter what sentence they are actually included in, appears to trigger the police to arrest you. And that includes the arresting of an old lady, I believe, in Wales, who was just sitting at the side of the road with a placard, which wasn't doing anybody any harm, and a man in Scotland wearing a t-shirt which basically said support action to recognise Palestine. And because he had put the words action and Palestine in large print, apparently that was terrorism. Now, how is it terrorism to wear a t-shirt or to display a placard being held by an old lady on a civilian street where you have the right to self-determination and you have the right to free expression? I don't know. I think the answer to that is buried in Britain's long-standing entanglement with the State of Israel. The State of Israel was effectively created by the United Kingdom itself in 1913, and that was contained in a document called the Balfour Agreement, which recognised that there should be a Jewish state and it should be called Israel, and Britain was basically saying that it should be somewhere in the Middle East, preferably in what is basically recognised as Palestine. Now you'll notice that on BBC, particularly BBC news programmes, you never hear the word Palestine, the actual place name. You don't hear that. What you hear is Palestinians and Israel, as if Palestinians are a nomadic tribe who just wandered into Israeli territory. Now this is obviously deliberate. The BBC is advisedly not mentioning the name Palestine, because to do that would be to imply recognition of Palestine as a state. And therefore the BBC is shying away from that. And the BBC, as we know, is more or less trumpeting whatever the United Kingdom government tells it to trumpet. And it warns the BBC not to mention certain words, one of which would be Palestine, I guess. And this is also why the old lady and the gentleman in the t-shirt were needlessly arrested for simply displaying two words, Palestine and action. Now these two words, separately, don't mean anything. Put them together and you get arrested. And to me that is not terrorism, that is just simply an arbitrary decision by the United Kingdom to demonise anybody who dares to display these two words. And I have not, I have to say, over the last few years, involved myself in the political arguments concerning Israel and Palestine, mainly because I don't want to get tied up in that. And because I've done that, I've tried to focus all my attention on Scottish politics instead. But when Scottish politics includes Scottish police officers arresting people simply for wearing a t-shirt, then I think there's something wrong. Somebody mentioned in a post today that the officer concerned in the Scottish case who arrested a young man for wearing a t-shirt which displayed those two words on it in a sentence, which was not the name of the organisation prescribed, by the way, that officer should be brought before the Holyrood Parliament and asked why it was necessary to arrest that individual who was plainly not doing anything. He had no terrorist connections whatsoever. He's not in charge of bomb-making materials. He's not plotting to overthrow the government. He wasn't plotting any acts of revenge or terrorist attacks. None of that is true. So why does this guy, this police officer, and the one in Wales, get away with doing that? And I think it's because they know that the British government will back them up, because that's what they've been told to do. They are police officers, and in Scotland they're meant to be accountable to the Holyrood Parliament, so we are told, and yet they're not. They're not accountable apparently to any Scottish politicians at all. It seems that they get their direction from the broader police service of the United Kingdom in what they may and may not do, and what they should and should not do about arresting people for wearing t-shirts or displaying little cardboard placards with words on them. Neither of those things implies membership of a prescribed organisation. They just imply support for Palestine and for anybody who wants to take action about supporting people who live in Palestine. Now, to me, this is a word salad game. I have to avoid mentioning these two words in the same order, otherwise I get arrested. It's a bit like playing a game of, of just a minute, where I have to use the same words, but I mustn't say a certain phrase. And this is ridiculous. This kind of arbitrary victimization needs to stop. It's not healthy in any democracy for it to exist at all. So, at the moment, I think it's safe to say that Inde-Car is going to continue in its present form. But you may have noticed that I'm concentrating quite a lot of effort with Norrie Hunter on producing Hodma Jacket every Friday morning, because I think it's important that people have a set time of the day when they know they're going to see a programme which gives them information which is being either withheld or is disapproved of by the British state in some form or other. And also I would suggest that Scottish media will not print it or show it to us, and the Scottish MSPs of virtually every party will not comment on it and will not even acknowledge that these broadcasts are happening or acknowledge who's broadcasting in the first place. So it's important for us to keep this going. It's very important for me to keep funding both Inde-Car on its more sort of scattered approach to programming, but also the regular occurrence of Inde-Car producing or helping to produce in collaboration with Norrie Hunter, the Hod Majaket program every Friday morning, because we need a regular, if you like, linear televised live program every week so that people know when to tune in. Now, of course, if when you're watching this program or Hod Majaket, you click on the notification bell, then you will be warned when I'm going live or when Hod Majaket is going live. But I don't want you to come away thinking, I'm just going to stop broadcasting. That's not what I'm saying. But at the moment, I would like to be able to produce more Inde-Car shows, and I can't. And if I don't solve this problem with funding in the next week or so, it may be very difficult for me to make any Inde-Car shows by myself. And we would only have Hod Majaket on Friday mornings at 9:30, which is not the way I want things to be. It's nice to have both programs healthy. We know that we've got an enlarging audience for Hod Majaket because we've seen the viewing numbers going up week by week. We cracked over 3,000 views last week. It obviously will vary up and down, but when people know where we are, it's much easier for them to tune in, and we can go straight into the topic without necessarily music or adverts or chit chat of any kind. We can just get straight into it and talk about the main topics that have come up during the week. At the moment, because it's summertime, there's not much political activity going on. This is what's known as the silly season. It's the season when the news editors at the BBC and in other newsrooms across the UK start trotting out what we would call fluffy kitten stories. Stories of everyday life, which are pretty banal really, and don't have any massive political importance. But one thing's for sure, the world, the politics of the entire planet has been severely upset by a number of factors, and I think the two biggest are probably the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and that has destabilized a lot of Europe, including the bit that we live in, as well as the mysterious election second time for Donald Trump, who has come in and basically trashed the normal rules of international trade and is trying to force people to make deals or face stiff tariffs. This is Trump basically trying to do deals with individual countries which benefit him and benefit the US. But really the sanctions that he's imposing on imports from everywhere, including here, are just stopping people from getting the products which are made perhaps in Scotland, perhaps in Europe or elsewhere in America, because they're so expensive. And there isn't anything really in the United States that could rival Scotch whisky, for example, or many other products from Scotland as well, including things like Glyn knitwear and certain foods. So it's not going to hurt us as much as it hurts Donald Trump's own voters. But all of this has destabilized the entire system. And even Donald Trump has been absolutely minuscule in his help for Ukraine, despite America coming down firmly on the side of the Ukrainians and wanting to make sure that they can defend themselves against 700 missiles and projectiles per night. That's an enormous barrage for cities and civilians to undergo without sufficient defense. Trump has just said that he's going to send 9 Patriot missiles, 9, to the Ukraine. That's not even a salvo for a single rocket battery. He's not said he's going to send 9 Patriot batteries to Ukraine with, dozens of missiles to help shoot down some of the ballistic threats. It's minimalist, and the Ukrainians are really having to innovate their own solutions to these issues. So Trump's not helping things. He's not helping Europe. He doesn't like Europe. He sees Europe as a competitor, an enemy of the United States, just like he sees virtually everybody else. So Scotland as a state wanting to emerge from the shackles of the Union is not going to get any support from Trump, but it is likely to get support from former colonies who are now UN countries in their own right. And this is why Salvo and Liberation.Scot have been so quick to put in the notification. Now, the notification which was made to the UN recently, partly with the help of Craig Murray, but with others as well, was really to let the UN know that Scotland intends to make an application for decolonisation and to be registered with that status as being fulfilling the requirements for decolonisation to take place. The second phase of that will be the delivery of certain documents making the arguments for the decolonisation process so that we get a ruling, and that will happen, I believe, later this year. I know that Craig Murray is planning another trip back to the UN fairly soon, but at the moment I don't know exactly why. We just know that he has made the required connections with people in the UN. He's spoken to the right sorts of people, and according to Craig himself, he has at least one UN member who is prepared to back Scotland's bid for decolonisation. So that is encouraging. But nothing at all is coming from the Scottish politicians. They don't even acknowledge the existence of this this application to the UN. And I've gone over the reasons for this in my show sometimes before, but I think my own take on this is twofold. That politicians do not want to acknowledge that the UN has been approached by a body which wasn't them. Political parties do not like being leapfrogged or usurped by citizen activism because it makes them look like what they are, incompetent and ineffectual. So that might be part of it. The other part of it might be they've been told not to respond to it. They've been told not to acknowledge its existence, and I know some of you were contacting me recently about the Sterling Directive, which was issued, I think, a couple of years ago now, which was delivered to the Holyrood Parliament, and there was also simultaneously an attempt was made to deliver it to Bute House, which was the residence of the then First Minister Humza Yousaf. The Bute House attempt, I believe, failed. The attempt to deliver it to the Holyrood Parliament partially succeeded, but our delivery team was forced to go round the back door and hand it to some civil servant functionary who accepted the document and took it away. But as far as we know, after that point, no politicians got to see it. They didn't open it, they certainly didn't read it, and none of them acknowledged its existence, which is either because this functionary never told them about it, or they deliberately didn't want to see it. Whatever the truth of the matter is, it's not good. But the point I'm trying to make here is that despite the fact that our politicians seem to be living in denial, the United Nations is being approached, and there will be a legal argument made with enormous amounts of supporting historical documentation which supports our position that Scotland is a non-self-governing territory of the UK. In other words, it is a colony in all but name, and it requires decolonisation. But it also requires the support of the Scottish people who are making this application through Salvo and through Liberation.Scot. And the more people who sign on to the Edinburgh Proclamation, which came out of both Salvo and Liberation.Scot, the better, because that reinforces the argument in the UN that hundreds of thousands of Scots want this. And the more evidence they see that it is normal, the civil population who want this, the better, because the politicians are obviously not doing it. Anyway, I have to go, but listen, thank you for listening to the end. Please help the channel to stay on the air. I'm attempting to raise somewhere around £300+. It's probably just going to be a one-off, and I will probably be able to carry on after that, having paid off these huge expenses which are coming up. It's not often I ask for your help, but on this occasion I can't broadcast any regular Inde-Car shows if it's not forthcoming. So I know a lot of you already donate to me in small sums, but on a regular basis. Please keep doing that. And for those of you who've maybe got a few bob salted away somewhere and you support the cause. If you want me to keep doing this more frequently, please help. I really appreciate it. I always appreciate all the likes, the notifications, the subscriptions, and the comments that you make on these programs. So please keep them coming. It's what keeps me going. That's it from Inde-Car today. Please keep the faith, and hopefully I'll be back on your screens on a more regular basis in the next few days. Bye for now.